from Jerusalem. My name is Aaron. I'm the director of Canada House. My pleasure to be with you today as we're discussing getting close to the festival of Shavuot, or as we call it in the Greek, Pentecost. Only a few days away from us now. We're coming to the end of a time of counting called the counting of the Omer. It's a numbering system that began at the end of Passover. So we keep adding one extra Omer, one extra count. We make sure that when we get to 50, when we get to 7 weeks, we celebrate the next festival. It's the Feast of Weeks, Feast of Shavuot. Shavuot, of course, as many of you would know, is one of the 3 big pilgrimage festivals. It's a time that the Lord himself requires all able-bodied men, probably bringing their families too, to come and stand before him in celebration. Acts of worship also included offerings, sacrifices, singing of songs, and eating in the presence of the Lord and with each other. It's a very happy time. It's also the celebration of the wheat harvest, which had been collected, would have been offered before the Lord. And in the temple times, 2 loaves of wheat bread were always offered before the Lord at this time, as a celebration that when we remind ourselves of the harvest, while we might do a lot of the work in the planting, sowing, reaping, in the harvest time, is the Lord that brings the rain and the sun, something that we have absolutely no control of. So we reflect that in all harvest activity, it's a partnership, just like it is in a journey of faith. It's a partnership between heaven and earth, between man and God. Now, where do we get this idea that it's 50 days from Shavuot, from Pentecost? And we get this directly from the Torah, from the Tanakh, from the Torah, from the Bible, God's instructions in his calendar. And what occurred at this time? Is it simply just an agricultural festival? No. The tradition, of course, is that at Shavuot, this is the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai. And how do we know this? Not that it actually says, here we are on Shavuot, and God gives us the 10 Commandments. Actually, it comes from a careful reading of the Bible, where we read in Exodus 19. It says in Hebrew, okay, in a rather large Hebraic tome here, it says, B'chodesh hashlishi, in the 3rd month, so calendar months in lunar calendar, 28 days. So we're in the 3rd month. So 2 months have already passed. Now in the 3rd one. B'chodesh hashlishi, in the 3rd month, letzet b'nei Yisrael me'eretz Mitzrayim, since the exiting or the exodus from the land of Egypt, b'yom hazeh, on that day. Of course, then begs the question, what day? It doesn't say what day. Many times in the Bible, the prophets, God, Moses will always talk about that day. And you're supposed to know what that day is. When you look around the Bible, look in the context. What are we talking about here? The day that the Lord appeared to his people on Mount Sinai, and he gave them the Torah. Now, there are lots of traditions that go along with God bringing the Torah to his people. Tradition is that when God speaks, fire comes out of his mouth, something that you can actually see, which again is also hinted at in the text. It's also a tradition that when God came down, he didn't come down by himself. He is the commander of the heavenly armies. So he came down with the heavenly armies. The tradition is that he came down with 600,000 angels. Why would he need so many? Because apparently there were 600,000 men that left Egypt. So each man who appears before the Lord gets his own guardian angel, which is a very nice thought indeed. And then God gives his Torah. What's that got to do with Gentiles? So many of us Gentiles, and when we think about Pentecost, we're kind of thinking about something else. is the Torah still something that we should read, accept? And let's ask a question. Who actually stood at Mount Sinai? Well, obviously, the Jewish people, the Israelites, the Hebrews, the ones who came out of Egypt, the former slaves. And is that all? No, because we know that inside Egypt, when the children of Israel put blood on their doorposts, and God sent his angel of death, anyone inside that house was saved. So the Israelis invited their neighbors, their friends, their families, and sometimes even the Egyptians to come and shelter inside and be saved. And when Israel left Egypt, the Egyptians who witnessed this and also witnessed the compassion and love of these former slaves went with them. They're called the mixed multitude. And so who's actually at Mount Sinai? Jews and Gentiles. And this has always been the plan of God, for these two groups to journey together. Israel is meant to be a light to the nations, and the Gentiles are meant to be attracted to God, to his wisdom, and to his Torah. We also know from Jeremiah 31, when the prophet Jeremiah speaks of the coming new covenant, the Brit Chadashah, that God will write the Torah on our hearts. So it's not done away with, it's not forgotten, and it's not replaced. Where does it go? On our hearts. Now in Pentecost, Acts chapter 2, Shavuot, we see another great outpouring and revelation, now not of the Torah, but of the Holy Spirit. And that Spirit, coupled with tongues of fire, shaking of the earth, fills the believers with joy, with wonder, with expectation and questions, and many people join the household of faith. And so some of the things I'd like us to ponder this Shavuot is those two aspects of Pentecost, that we need both. We need the Holy Spirit and we need the Torah. Both live inside of us, dwell within our communities, both encourage us, both help us to walk the walk of faith. Faith without works is dead, says our friend James. And so I think as we contemplate this Pilgrim Festival, as we contemplate the gifts that God has given, he has given us his word, he's given us his guidance, his instruction, he has placed his Torah on our hearts, he has given us the Spirit, sealing us to a hope and a future. Shalom from Jerusalem.